Hey guys, I'm Amy Marashi and this is Oliver. Say hello. Okay, in today's video, I'm going to be talking about the 5 things that I learned from my editor. And if you watched the last video, you might remember that I am on a wait list right now to have another editor look at my work. The editor I'm waiting to see is going to be the line editor, and then I also have a proofreader lined up a month after the line editor so that I can really get the ball rolling now. Because there's literally been months where I haven't done anything, and so I'm basically just waiting. Okay, the first tip is that all of the scenes that you have, especially in the middle, should be pushing the story forward. So if they're there, basically if you can change the scenes into any order, it's not pushing the story forward. So in order for it to push the story forward, you can't have that option to go back or to kind of change out the order of those scenes, if that makes sense. So it doesn't mean that you need to completely rewrite them. It just means that you need to maybe tweak them a little bit, maybe write some extra parts of it in there. You want to raise the stakes each time you have a scene. That way, when you get to the big conflict, you know, like that will be there. Item number 2, I feel kind of silly about. I didn't realize it was a thing until somebody pointed it out, and then now I'm like, oh my gosh, how did I not realize this was happening? Okay, item number 2 is when you have a point of view and it's like the narrator is the character, and then you want to throw in some internal dialogue in there. I guess my confusion was like, when do I italicize? And so you're gonna want to italicize whenever it's like literally internal dialogue, like that's what the character is saying in their head, and it needs to be in present tense. So for example, for my story, I write in past tense and I have to switch it. So when I do the internal dialogue, whenever you're thinking in your head, you're not thinking in past tense, you're thinking in present tense. And so, I don't know, I just never realized that I read that in books, but now that, you know, the editor pointed that out to me, I'm like, oh my gosh, you're right. This is totally wrong. And so I feel like it's a really good thing for me to know, and I feel like I'm going to improve from there. Like I'm probably not going to make that mistake again. So anyways, the second part of item number 2 is quotation marks. And so again, this is another thing I didn't realize when I read books, that it happens in books. But when you have like, say a character's talking and there's 2 paragraphs back to back, there's no like dialogue tags in there, you don't close the quotation marks in the first paragraph. And so I never realized that that was a thing, and it's a thing. So don't do what I did and leave that out. Okay, tip number 3 is super easy. And again, it's something that I didn't realize was a thing, but it's apparently a thing. Okay, so when you're describing a photograph, you're going to want to describe that photograph in present tense, because that photograph's never going to change. It wasn't like he was eating a sandwich in the photograph. He is eating a sandwich in the photograph because he's always going to be eating it. It's like, it's a moment captured forever. Tip number 4, again, like this is another thing that I think I just wasn't mindful of it because this is my very first book and I've never written a book before. But whenever I have like minor characters, you should definitely describe the minor characters as soon as they walk onto the page. Like what happened with my story was I have a character named Winston, and my editor, like she pictured Winston as like a middle-aged man, and in the story he's not. So she realized that he was not a middle-aged man around, you know, chapters and chapters later, and she's like, oh my gosh. And so I feel like that's important. Okay, so when you go to describe characters, one thing that I've kind of read about online, like you want to give your characters a memorable quality and you want to keep reminding them. So like say if you have a character that starts out in the 2nd chapter and she's not going to show up again until the middle of the chapter. An example that's coming to my mind is like in Harry Potter, Mad-Eye Moody has an eye patch. And so like that's something where like that's like what he has, that's him. And so you want to give, you know, you don't want to have your readers be like, oh, who is this person? I don't remember them. And so that's important to have in there. You want to make sure like the reader isn't having to work that hard to remember characters and to remember like what do they look like. And you want to make sure they have a picture in their head when they're reading the book. Item number 5 is kind of silly. I never realized that this was a thing either, along with all the other things I listed. So sometimes you actually do need to capitalize mom, dad, aunt, uncle, and it just depends on how that word is being used. So if you're using it like you would use like Tom, if you could replace mom or dad or aunt or uncle or whatever it is with Tom or Margaret or whatever her name is, Kevin, and it makes sense, then that means that you can capitalize that. And so like, for example, I handed the vase to mom. That would be capital. But if you put, I handed the vase to my mom, that would be lowercase. So that was a good tip. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, give it a thumbs down. And if there's something that you guys want to see in the future, feel free to write that in the comments. And the next video will be out on Wednesday. Bye.